Hey, everybody. Welcome to the 18th. Yeah, I think it's the 18th episode of Kabbalistic Mystic, the podcast for the Western seeker, where we explore the tree of life and the ancient Hebrew wisdom as the lost spiritual heritage of the West. I'm your host, Ovadia Batat, and I want to start by telling you that things are going to change here a little bit. So I want to share a little bit what happened over the past month or so. I've been going through this process of really trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. And throughout the years, I always wanted to become a writer. And as of late, I started writing my book. I'm very excited about it, but it wasn't an easy journey to do. I had a lot of difficulties. I realized I had a lot of fears diving into the process. And I also realized that in order for me to actually write my book, I need to stop seeking perfection. And the same goes for a Kabbalistic mystic. I cannot write my book if I'm going to be spending 2.5 days every week or every 2 weeks, since lately I've been changing Kabbalistic mystic to be a 2 week thing, for researching, writing, reading, editing, and basically producing a Kabbalistic mystic episode. It's just too much time, and I need to focus on writing my book. I need to focus on making some money. Many people like me have been doing this. People who just like me left the corporate world, left a big fat paycheck, and are pursuing their destiny, pursuing what they really want to do in this world. And it's not easy, and you have to make sacrifices. And a sacrifice I have to make is that I can no longer provide you with episodes that are, how should we say, polished from start to end. Now, this, of course, is causing me to brush against my need for perfection, as I said before. And it's good for me because, nothing is perfect. And it's just going to be what it's going to be. And basically, bottom line, I say, fuck it. I'm just going to be who I am. So things are going to change. Some things you're going to like, some things you're not going to like. There's going to be less music. There's going to be less anecdotes, sort of like things that are edited from other sources. Sometimes it's just going to be me speaking. But it was either that or letting go of Kabbalistic Mystic altogether. And I didn't want to let it go. So um, here it is, Kabbalistic Mystic, episode 18. And today I want to talk to you just off the bat, off my head, on what is going on in the world. And in order to do that, in order to understand where we are in our human evolution, I want to zoom out. I want to take you to a bird's eye view and basically give you a glimpse into the way I look at the progress of humanity. Not just me, many people in the consciousness movement look at the progress of humanity and where we are right now, where we're going from here. And that's what we're going to do today. So, welcome. And yeah, see, there's going to be a lot of those. Like, what am I saying now? All right, let's begin. So, I recently started reading a book called Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. And some of you have read it, I'm sure. Some of you have not, maybe heard about it. It's been on the recommended book list from President Barack Obama as of late. It's a great book. I'm reading it in Hebrew. In Hebrew, it's called Taktsir Toldot HaEnoshut, A Brief History of, I guess, Humankind. And it's a really great book because what Professor Yuval Harari is doing is kind of zooming out and giving us a glimpse of, from his perspective, how things happened. And when I read it, and I'm not quite done, but as I'm reading it, I'm sort of aligning it to the various esoteric and occult teachings that I've been studying over the years and kind of getting a glimpse of what's actually going on. I'm also comparing it to the various concepts behind the various calendars that are ending at this particular point in time. The Jewish calendar, the Mayan calendar. So I want to give you a little bit of an overview of what is happening here. If you're living on this planet and not been hiding under a rock for the past, I don't know, maybe 200 years, you know, especially 100 years and especially 50 years, you know that something big is happening. We are, in terms of our evolution, we're accelerating. Everything is changing. And it's changing in a pace that is so much faster than it used to be. It's almost hard to digest. It's intense. It's really intense. So let's look at a brief history of humankind. So let's see. The Earth exists, what, 4.5 billion years ago? Life on Earth, 3.8 billion years ago. Homo sapiens, which means us, our type of humans, exist on this planet only for the last 200,000 years. So when you look at that particular point in time, that particular fraction of time out of 4.5 billion years, that's a really small amount of time. Humans in general have been living on this planet for about 2.5 million years. But the humans that have been living here in the last 2 million years were just like any other animal, right? They didn't have any self-consciousness. They did not think, therefore I am. They had no concept of I'm human, this is a chimpanzee, and oh wow, why is a chimpanzee doing this and I'm doing that? They had no self-awareness of their own consciousness. So 200,000 years ago, the Homo sapiens are being developing, and then the real, the first really important thing to understand was the linguistic revolution. I guess that's what you would call it in English, המהפכה הלשונית, the language revolution, and that happened 70,000 years ago, about 70,000 years ago, and that was when humans started communicating with language. And that changed everything. Now, scientists, anthropologists, historians don't quite get what happened 70,000 years ago that have caused this to have happened. And we're going to talk about that in a second because esoteric teaching actually explains what happened. And the reason why this is an important question is because nothing changed. There were Homo sapiens on the planet about 130,000 years earlier than that. They were Neanderthal. I don't even know how to say that that word. I mean, there were other types of humans on the face of the planet. Neanderthals, I guess. Anyway, why did they develop the language abilities that Homo sapiens did 70,000 years ago? Something happened. Self-awareness, self-consciousness has evolved, has been birthed. So that was a very, very important time to note on the face of this planet. Now, once that happened, Homo sapiens started expanding in the world. Big animals started dying in dozens. I mean, just basically extinct left and right. Everywhere the Homo sapiens got, the big animals disappeared. In his book, Yuval Harari blames humans. There are slightly different explanations potentially in esoteric teachings. And about maybe 14,000 years ago, Homo sapiens have reached America. And then the next really important date is about 10,000 years ago. So we have 4.5 billion years ago, planets being birthed. 2.5 billion years ago, first type of humans on the face of the planet. Homo sapiens, that is us, 200,000 years ago. Then 70,000 years ago, the language revolution. And then 10,000 years ago, the agricultural revolution. Basically what happened, humans stopped being hunters and gatherers, and instead they became farmers. They have decided to focus on one place and basically start growing shit. Growing corn, growing wheat, basically making a particular place home. And there's all kind of implications to that. And some of them good, some of them bad. If you are interested in what exactly happened, if it's been good or bad for humanity, read Yuval's book. But in general, he claims that it wasn't a good thing because when you are moving, when you're on the when you're constantly changing and evolving like a hunter and gatherer, you are more immune to disease. You're more there's always something to hunt. There's always something to gather. But if you're focused in one place and your main source of food is wheat, and there's a year without a lot of rain or some disease ate your crops, you're fucked. So, anyway, so 10,000 years ago, the agricultural revolution. Then, about 3,000 years ago, the organized religion has started. Maybe 5,000 years ago, it depends who you ask. It started kind of in Egypt, and first that money has appeared. So, really, you're talking about think about it as like sort of like a funnel, right? 4.5 billion years ago, this planet's been created. For a million of years, there were some type of humans here, and as we focus and we zoom in really closely into this time, we're only talking about a few thousand years that organized religion existed, that money existed. And of course, as humans populated the planet more and more, you had the need for money in order to exchange goods and services, right? Islam exists only about 1400 years. Now, 500 years ago, the science revolution started, right? And then things really started to accelerate. The Industrial Revolution is only 200 years ago. Suddenly, oh my God, we can produce whatever we want in the quantity that we want. Massive, massive extinction of planets and plants and animals on the face of the planet. Bad things, good things, technology has been amazing. Internet exists only for the past, what? I don't know, 30, 40 years? I mean, internet in household, less than that? So we're talking about an extreme acceleration in the way us humans relate to this planet. Now, let's talk about consciousness. When we talk about consciousness, the first time human consciousness has started pointing inward, that was, as we said before, 70,000 years ago. But only in that last 120 years, there was a realization that something called the subconscious really exists. Freud, who started the psychoanalytic movement in Europe in the late 1800s, coined that concept. Before that, people didn't even know that it exists. People thought that hysteria, for example, was a disease that only women suffer from. So we're talking about a very, very recent thing that people are self-advancing, self-healing, self-analyzing their own consciousness, their own ego, realizing that the ego personality is fake, that who we think we are is not really who we are. Zoom out. Look at it from a bird's eye view. We're starting to realize that we've looked at things wrong the whole time. Our entire way of being, our entire conscious existence has been a lie. Not a lie in the bad sense of the word, but a lie in the sense that it has been something that is not true. Who are we really? And in order to understand that, we can go to esoteric teaching. Now, I want to expand on that question a little bit because it feels like an abstract question, and I want to make it a little bit more tangible. If the ego personality is not real, if who we think we are is essentially an accumulation of particular labels of things that we've gathered since childhood, then there is a different true self that is beyond who we think we are. Now, let's talk about animals, for example. Animals don't have, in general, okay, because this is a big generalization, some animals more than others, but generally animals don't have the concept of I think, therefore I am. You have no other species on the face of the planet that is basically investigating other species. So we're talking about a level of consciousness that is conscious, I think, but there is no therefore I am. There is no conscious awareness of one's own existence. Now, that's one particular level of consciousness, and we've been living that level of consciousness over the past 70,000 years, 65,000 years to be exact. We have entered a different type of consciousness. We are in a different phase of human consciousness evolution. We no longer think, oh, I think, therefore I am. We now think, I think, therefore I lie to myself. I think, therefore, who am I? Because the thinking in itself creates a particular reality that is not necessarily true. Our entire process of thinking has been based on what we see around us and how we relate to the environment, based on our history and based on the experience that we had. But what if that's not true? What if we are moving towards a renaissance when it comes to human consciousness evolution? What if our mind is nothing but a child's mind? What if we haven't even graduated to the minimum capacity of our mind? Everybody who has kids can relate to this, because we see the next generation and we see how exponentially more self-aware the next generation is. I saw something on Facebook in the past week. It was something like a woman describing how her child was crying. He was sad. She was trying to help him. It was like, oh, why are you sad? Let's do this. Let's do that. Maybe this, maybe that. Sort of trying to figure out what happened and how to solve it. And he told her, Mom, you suck at this. Just let me be sad. Now that is a level of consciousness, a level of realization, a level of self-awareness that some of us adults took years to figure out. Now, every generation exponentially is more self-aware and is faster when it comes to understanding their emotions and understanding that labels are nothing. And that, my friends, manifests itself in every aspect of society. Let's look at what's happening in the financial arena. More and more people like me have left their corporate job, have realized that they've been basically stuck in a hamster wheel, and are no longer interested in having that race. Why am I doing this? Not only, oh yeah, I need to make money because I need to pay for my family. It's no longer satisfying for us to live on the bottom of the pyramid of needs. We want to live higher on the pyramid of the Maslow pyramids of needs. We want self-realization. We want happiness. Why am I here? Gods who do not know what they want is the most dangerous thing, Yuval says at the end of his book. And he's right. We can manifest anything we want. We don't know what we want. And because we don't know what we want, I mean, how much more can we become comfortable? Let's look at, here in the Western states, look at people who have money, who have a lot of money. They still struggle with the same things that me and you struggle on a daily basis when it comes to the inner world. The outer satisfaction, the appetites of the body, can only be satisfied to a particular level. There's only so much we can eat at any given time. There's only so many beds we could sleep in at any given time. So many houses we can own. So many vehicles we can drive. We can only drive one vehicle at a time, sleep in one bed at a time, eat in one restaurant at a time. There's a limit to how much pleasure we can give ourselves, how much comfort. When it comes to the inner world, we all share the same thing. We all share the same emotions. We all share the same challenges. We are realizing that more and more as humans. And because we realize that more and more, we realize that the external appetites. Well, there's a level. If we look at the Maslow pyramids of need, there's a level when it comes to security, when it comes to not being hungry. But once that's been satisfied, what's the next thing? Well, career, family, friends, self-realization. More and more people are interested in that, and so they quit their corporate job. They quit the job that they always hated, or even didn't hate, but they are interested in doing something they always wanted to do. I always wanted to become a writer. The reason I wasn't a writer is because I thought, oh, writers don't make money. I'm going to be a writer when I have a lot of money and I can do whatever I want. Well, no. You cannot escape your destiny. You cannot escape who you are. We are all artists. Period. Art in Hebrew is omanut. Switch one letter in the word omanut, and you get onamut. You're switching the nun and the mem, the n and the m. Omanut, onamut, which means art or die. We are all artists in one way or another. No matter what we do on the face of this planet, if we don't manifest some kind of an artistic way to express ourselves, we are dead from within. It could be anything. It could be a TV show. It could be writing. It could be painting. It could be sculpting. It could be building cars. It could be software design. But it cannot be in a vacuum. And so people are starting to realize that the old way of making money is obsolete. The old way of actually providing for oneself is obsolete. The entire financial structure is crumbling. Think about what happened. We created money to exchange goods and services. The world, Deepak Chopra said, nationalism is a modern form of tribalism. I say nationalism is an obsolete form of tribalism. Why? Because we've grown so much, we no longer can ignore the fact that we are one planet, one people. We're all the same. We all share the same amount of resources. There is no reason that on the face of this planet, anybody should go hungry. There's enough resources on the face of the planet to feed every person on Earth, to feed them, to provide them with energy. Imagine what we could do if no nation would spend money on weapons, on wars, on security, on borders, and instead we focus on distribution of resources so that everybody can get up in the morning and ask, what do I want to do? How do I want to contribute to society? Everybody wants to do something else. Everybody's different. We can use technology. We have all the tools at our disposal. We can use technology in order to create a better world for ourselves, to do all the things that people don't want to do. Sewer, garbage, things like that. People can focus on what they actually want to do. Things like the Venus Project, that's based in Venus, Florida, that started in 1974 by, I forgot his name. I'll come up later. Maybe I'll Google it as I talk. Things like the Venus Project, which are projects essentially to explore the notion of living in a planet with no money, are exponentially getting more and more exposure. If 1974, when the founder of the Venus Project was sitting with Larry King and talking about the concept of a planet with no money, sharing resources, and that seemed like a crazy idea. Now it's starting to become, something that makes a lot more sense. I think the guy name was Jacques Fresco. He founded the Venus Project, and you can find more information on thevenusproject.com. Anyway, so what's happening? More and more, the few have gathered the vast majority of resources, and we, the simple person, realize that this model simply doesn't work. And more we go inward, the less we need external stimulus, the less we are interested in gratification that comes from external appetites. We want to feel good. Not feel good when it comes to, ooh, this feels good on my skin. That is an escape. That's why people do drugs. That's why we drink alcohol. That's why we overeat. That's why we oversleep. That's why we use our electronics. We escape the deep pain that is within. The pain due to lack of self-realization, the pain due to trauma, due to grief, due to anger. But when we really work with these emotions, when we really find a healthy outlet for these emotions, we discover that we can become better and more whole human beings. So everything is changing. Now, another thing is changing. More and more, we are realizing that there's more to life than what you see. That science has failed to give us all the answers that we've been asking. Why are we here? What are humans? Are we alone on the face of the universe? Why were we born? Is there life after death? What is happening after death? Science has no ability to answer these questions simply because science is limited to what can be measured physically. There is a different reality that is not physical, that is metaphysical, that cannot be measured in a lab, that exists. It's there. There's other dimensions. More and more people realize that. Now, this might sound to many of you as a bunch of mumbo jumbo, kind of like foo-foo stuff, but it's real. The consciousness movement is the fastest growing movement on the face of the planet in all of human history. More and more people are realizing that energy is everything, and everything is energy. There's more energy workers, healers, coaches developing on the face of the planet than any other profession. And that is because there's more to life than what we see. So all these things that are happening, if we zoom out, we realize that there's an acceleration. We are running towards a particular finish line, toward a particular, well, there's really no finish line, but we're running towards a renaissance of human existence. Now, there is no light without darkness. As we're running towards that new reality, the darkness is also accelerating. We have shifted already. The battle has been won. The story has been written. Esoteric teaching tells us that we are actually living a story, that the skeleton for the story has already been written. Each one of us has free will to decide what we want to be within that story, but the story has already been written. The calendars teach us that. So let's talk about the calendars, and let's see how this brief history of humankind fits into those calendars. The Mayan calendar ended in 2012. 2012, according to esoteric teaching, and specifically the Law of One, was the last year of what's called third density. There are 7 densities in our portions of the universe, in the known universe, really. There are 7 different layers of existence, seven different vibrations of existence. We have switched to third density, which is the density of humans, Homo sapiens, actually. According to esoteric teaching, guess what? 65,000 years ago. Which matches exactly what Yuval Harari described in his book as 70,000 years ago being the language revolution. What happened 65,000 years ago? We became self-aware. Now, how does one become self-aware? One does not sit on a rock and then suddenly says, oh, I think, therefore I am. Well, maybe he or she does, but we are born, we are being reincarnated. This is the only way we advance, we evolve on this planet. We die and we reincarnate. The incarnation on the face of the planet, 65,000 years ago, started as beings who have the capacity to be self-aware. And this is because the planet has moved into a new density, a new vibration of self-awareness. It's called third density. Now, third density is the shortest density of all densities. It is extremely short. And why, we're going to discuss in some other episode. But it's only 65,000 years, and it has ended. In 2012, we've entered fourth density. Now, one might say, you listener is going to say, oh, well, everything is the same. Okay, like there's still humans around us and everything. Well, yeah, it doesn't switch. It's not like a switch. It's not black and white. We're not switching from today or tomorrow, but we've passed a particular threshold. And what happens going forward, it's probably going to take a few hundred years to happen. Actually, in some writings I read that it's going to take about 900 years to complete. But we are developing a new type of humans is being born on the face of the planet, slowly and steadily. We are developing our frontal cortex by opening our left and right hemispheres and reaching a particular union. And as our frontal cortex is opening, psychic abilities are being developed. A new race of humans is being developed on the face of the planet. A race of humans who are going to be able to read thoughts, to communicate with each other in ways we haven't even imagined. That's what esoteric teaching is telling us. That is also the conclusion, interestingly enough, that many scientists talk about. There's all kind of articles that I've been gathering lately that show that science is catching up a little bit to start realize that everything is consciousness. I just read an article that says that quantum theory suggests that consciousness moves on after death. Surprise, surprise. If you study esoteric teachings, if you study occult scientists, if you study, all the spiritual systems, they talk about that. That we are pure consciousness, that this physical vessel is nothing but a vessel. Another article that I thought was interesting is, what was it? I think it said, do stars have consciousness? Well, we were saying that there are 7 densities of existence. Stars, according to esoteric teaching, according to the law of one, are essentially of 7th density. Now, there's a purpose here. There's a progress. There's a story. And we're not going to go into it in this particular episode, because in this episode, I'm just trying to give sort of like a zoom out, a bird's eye view of where we are in our progress. But there's a reason why we are moving from one density to another. And we'll ignore the reason in the macro, but the reason in the micro is for the purpose of evolution of our own consciousness. We are moving towards becoming one being. The entire people of Earth are moving towards coming together as one. We started from one, we are going back to one. Rumi says, the Sufi poet, that you should look at yourself as a piece of glass. God took itself, basically make itself a mirror, and broke itself into billions, Googles of pieces. You are one of those pieces. But you're a piece of the same mirror. You contain within yourself every other piece. And our entire goal of this progress is to come back and to be one. And so if you look at it from the bird's eye view, you see that the entire progress on the face of this planet has been a progress of globalization, of coming together as people. The old paradigm of that's mine, that's not yours, tribalism, this belongs to me, does no longer work. And so we are slowly and steadily realizing that we need to work together as one peoples, as one species on one planet, and we can achieve a lot more. More and more we realize that the answers to all the unanswered questions are going to come from within, not from outside. If we want to find other life in the universe, we must go inward, not outward. Let's talk about the Jewish calendar. So the Jewish calendar tells us that essentially where we are in terms of human history, we have just entered the 1,000 years of the feminine. Essentially next year, 2017, is the year 5,777 in the Jewish calendar. Between that year and the year 6000, that is in the next 233 years, something called the Messiah is supposed to come. Now, what is the Messiah? Nobody knows. Is it a particular person like Jesus that's going to be enlightened, is going to save us all? Maybe, maybe not. The story tells that he's going to be riding a donkey, entering the gates of Jerusalem. But that doesn't matter. We can look at the Messiah as a concept that is basically saying we are all becoming enlightened beings. The concept of enlightenment, as taught by the Tree of Life, as taught by esoteric teaching, as taught by Kabbalists around the world, as taught by various other spiritual methodologies, is a process of awakening, a process of ego dissolution, a process of rising above our individual needs and becoming love, becoming somebody who loves other people, who serves other people, becoming one. That has always been the case. The prophecy says, let's say you're a Christian. The Christian prophecy says that Jesus was the first, but many will follow. The Jewish calendar explains that now we have entered that time. And during this particular period of time, the next 200 years, there's going to be a tremendous shift towards 1,000 years of renaissance, of beauty on the face of the planet. Essentially, it's called the rule of the feminine. Now, what is the feminine? It's very symbolic. Everything is symbolic in creation. Everything is symbolic. Everything you look at, everything you do, ask yourself, what is the symbolism here? Because in everything, just like everything is logical, at the exact same time, everything is metaphoric. Everything is intuitive. Everything is feminine. In everything in creation, there is masculine and feminine coexisting in perfect harmony at any given time. And so the reason your ankle hurts, the reason you have a headache, the reason you have a stomachache, the reason why you're sad is logical, but it's also metaphoric. Because everything is metaphoric. And so the elections, look at the elections that are happening right now. It's metaphoric. There's a metaphor here. The rise of the feminine, whether Hillary Clinton's getting elected or not, that's a different question. The entire election process has been metaphoric. You have a candidate named Bernie Sanders who is extremely dedicated to serving others his entire life. The guy's been chained to a linked fence in the 60s, fighting for human rights, for black rights. He dedicated his entire life to the service of others, and he almost grabbed the Democratic nomination, but not quite. Now that is a metaphor to what is happening. We're not quite there yet. We're getting there, but we're not quite there yet. And unfortunately, there is no light without darkness. So maybe, just maybe, we need to suffer more darkness in order to realize what needs to happen. And once we suffer more, then a lot more people will realize that the only way to win this game, the only way to have a happy ending, is if we all work together. On the other side of the scale, you have somebody like Donald Trump, who, just like you and me, is a part of creation. But Donald Trump embodies what on the Tree of Life is shown as the side of fear, the exact opposite of love. Me, 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 me. Donald Trump, as Jon Stewart said at the beginning of his campaign, is America's id running for president. He's the shadow. He's the embodiment of the shadow, not him as an individual. Him as an individual is just like you and me. He has fears. He has concerns. He suffers. He suffers due to other things than you and I do. He doesn't suffer because he's afraid he's not going to have money. He just doesn't have that kind of fear. But he suffers when his ego is bagged. We all suffer in one way or another. He just represents a particular point on the spectrum. The unawakened individual. The individual who thinks that the old paradigm is the only thing that can save us. The old paradigm is the only thing that can hold us back. We must move forward. And forward movement is always, as we see from this bird's eye view, is towards globalization, towards acceleration of our own self-consciousness and going inward versus going outward. It's not about winning. When's the last time we won against any country? Donald Trump asked in the beginning of his campaign. It's not what it's about. It's not about winning. It's about coming together. When's the last time we have done something for the world? Well, many people do something for the world any given day in many different countries. We must stop looking at ourselves as Americans. We must start looking at ourselves as humans. So that is a brief history of humankind. That was a zoom out, bird's eye view of where we are in this process. We have entered a very, very special time in human history. We see it. We see it in every generation. We see it in every person that is around us. We feel it. It's overwhelming. So what do we do? And I want to end this episode with that question. What do we do? How do we participate? Well, I think the question you have to ask yourself is twofold. The first thing is, what do you want your part in the story to be? Do you want to contribute directly by, doing some kind of a healing work in the world, either physical or metaphysical? Do you want to contribute by serving others some way? Maybe you want to volunteer, just do something for other people. Do you want to participate by studying and learning more, by writing a book? Do you want to participate in this revolution, in this progress towards a new age by self-study, by transforming your own consciousness, by healing your own wounds? We are one. Working on yourself means you work on everybody else. Raising your own consciousness, raising your own vibration means that you're raising the vibration of the entire planet. Just by meditating daily, you are contributing, you are being a part of the story. What do you want to be when it comes to this story? For me, it's writing my book. For me, it's doing this podcast. For me, it's talking to you right now. For you, it might be listening to me right now. What do you want your part to be? That's the first question. The second question is, what do you want to do? What is your ultimate desire? How can you turn your life into a life of fun, joy, excitement? Because here's the beautiful thing. There's a system. For everything to work, there's a mechanism. And here, there's a mechanism as well. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. It doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be problematic. There's a way to flow in the world. If you're not having fun, if you're not enjoying yourself, I'm not talking about if you happen to be a person who is stuck on the first layer of the pyramid, if you have nowhere to sleep, if you have nowhere to be, if you have no food, that's different. You are fighting, you're struggling with a different set of requirements. Work to fix that first. And there's plenty of stories of people who have managed to do that. Ask yourself, what is stopping you? What is the next step I need to do in order to rise from that level of the pyramid? Make that happen. But for all of us who are beyond that, and I suspect the vast majority of my listeners are, the question is, what did you always want to be? What did you want to become? Who are you? What is your art? What do you want to create? If tomorrow you will die, when you look back, you're going to say, what do I regret that I didn't do? That is why I invite you to ask. And that would give you a very clear understanding of how you want to contribute, how you want to be a part of what is happening. And a very easy way to do that in this particular point of human history is to vote. And I'm not a Hillary Clinton fan. For me, if Bernie Sanders symbolized an acceleration towards where we're going in terms of the destiny of this planet, if Donald Trump is symbolizing the unaware, unconscious id, the shadow of the collective ego personality, the collective consciousness of humanity, then Hillary Clinton symbolizes a status quo. And that's not where I want to be. But I will be voting for Hillary Clinton because I'm also pragmatic. I'm also a realist. And there's only two options. And if I don't vote for Hillary Clinton, I'm voting for Donald Trump. In fact, I'm giving two votes. I'm letting go of my vote and elevating a different vote that is going to be for Donald Trump. And so I call upon you to ask yourself, what is really important to you right now? Follow your conscience. So that concludes our 18th episode of Kabbalistic Mystic. Today we took the bird's eye view on humanity, where we are in this progress. I'm kind of testing the water with this new format of just speaking on a particular topic that I did not prepare in advance. And I want to hear your opinions. I really didn't want to let this podcast go, and so this is really the only way I can support it going forward. And you, the person who is listening, and I know you are because I see the downloads. I have tracking, and I see that people are downloading these episodes. So you, the one who listens right now, who hears my voice, I want to hear from you. Email me, ovadia@batat.com. Go to my website, kabbalisticmystic.com. Email me there. Just tell me what you want to do. Tell me how you want to be a part of the process, the progress of this revolution. I want to hear from you. I want to know who you are. I want to know your name. I want to know where you're from. I want to know your struggles. Contact me. Ask a question. Tell me a story. I love you. From Spokane, Washington, this is Ovadia Batat, wishing you love in every moment.